Diane is the president and co-founder of Community Native Plant Project, CNPP, which is a nonprofit based in Prince George's County that is committed to spreading awareness about the critical role of native plants and the problems with invasives. Diane is a Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional, Level 1, Master Naturalist, and Prince George's County Audubon Society Wildlife Habitat Advisor. She's a former board member of the Maryland Native Plant Society, and she has an extensive background in policy and advocacy work. Thank you for joining us, Diane. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, and it's a great seeing all the friendly faces here. And a forewarning, I am going to be making some pop culture references that are definitely going to date me, and I hope they're going to date all of you too. Anyway, I just want to say that I am a little bit different than the usual presenters for the Maryland Native Plant Society. You usually hear from experts or scientists or in a field of study. And, as Judy mentioned in my bio, I'm more of a dilettante of the natural world. My background is in advocacy, and at CNPP, the gist of what we do is advocate on behalf of native planting. So if you were to describe what we at CNPP do as a part of speech, we are a conjunction. So, as Schoolhouse Rock says, we're hooking up cars and making them function. And the cars in this case are science and advocacy and people and resources. And from this combo, we get a very localized movement focused on getting more everyday folk committed to native planting. And CNPP works really hard to help translate the science into understandable information that motivates people to join the cause and to act. And the CNPP started working in mid-2020. It was a pandemic project, and we started as Cheverly Native Planting Project because that's where most of us are based. Last year, we changed our name to Community Native Planting Project to reflect both that we work beyond Cheverly, we aren't tied to a location, and that we're using native plants as an organizing principle or an organizing idea to build community. We're a volunteer-run group and a membership-based nonprofit. And as stated, our mission is to get as many native plants in the ground in as many types of green spaces that are out there, from container planting to vast natural areas. And we also want to reduce the vast expanses of turf grass, the use of non-native species, and to eliminate invasives everywhere, because, we have to be aspirational about the invasives. But we want to really spread the word and spread the practice that native plants aren't just nice, but that they're necessary. You all know that. So to realize these goals and how we turn them into action, we use 3 different approaches. And I'm just going to indulge me a bit. I'm going to play this little reel, which sums up how we engage the community around our mission. That's it. That sums up everything we do. So I don't need to speak anymore tonight. Wouldn't that be nice? But for those of you who are on phones and didn't get to see the video, CNPP serves as an environmental stewards for spaces. We offer guidance and programs focused on landscaping and landscaping practices, and we do education and outreach in a variety of ways. And, you know, as you all know, these things don't always fit into nice, neat little separate boxes. There's a lot of Venn diagram-esque overlap in our three branches and our three divisions. And while I wish I could say the video said it all, I suppose I should expand a little bit on what our work looks like. So our environmental stewardship, CNPP's interpretation of environmental stewardship is what we call site work. For CNPP's sites, we are the lead on all work associated with the transformation and the maintenance of them maintenance of them as native plant-based green spaces. Currently, we have 8 sites, and in many ways, they are demonstration projects representing the variety of spaces and types of stewardship. And our sites, so that means our sites range from landscape beds designed around the current aesthetics, and all the way to an 11-acre nature park. And obviously the stewardship looks very different at these 2 sites. The landscape ones require fiddly maintenance and a lot of attention. Whereas the nature park, our focus on the nature park was removing about, I think it was about 1.3 or 1.5 acres of total wisteria, invasive wisteria. And now that it's been removed, we've been letting nature heal itself. We've been letting nature take its course, and we only have to go back a few times a year just to keep the wisteria, to make sure that wisteria is not making a comeback, and that no other invasives are really coming in and getting established. And I think the main difference of CNPP's approach, this kind of, you know, alludes to the main difference of CNPP's approach is to a number of similar groups, is that many groups are organized around a space. They're organized around a park, a natural area, or a watershed, and the health of that area is their primary focus. Whereas for us, for CNPP, the primary for us is native plants. And of course, our sites do tie us to place, but that's secondary, and our sites are scattered, and they're going to get more scattered as we expand. So we're kind of like a roving band of merrymakers spreading native plants, which is a lot of fun. Anyway, so going a little bit deeper into what we do at sites, we identify as ours. We have long-term maintenance commitments to our sites. We don't go in and do a cleanup or a planting and then walk away. And because we don't own any land, we work in concert with the owner of the property, and agree to do most, if not all, of the work associated with keeping it going and keeping it healthy. We try to find 2 site leaders, or at least 1 site leader for each site, who serve as the primary caretakers for that site. Generally, we try to find people who live very, very close to the site, like in their backyard or their house backs up to it, or that they have a reason that they're going to that place on a regular basis anyway. So the site leaders, and this is because the site leaders are constantly tracking the conditions and the needs of the space. And based on this continual monitoring, the site leaders determine the specific work needed, and a lot of them just do what they can themselves. Each month we check in, and if they need help, we set dates for work sessions and reach out to volunteers just to lend a hand to keep the sites in tip-top shape. And as you all know, what sites need changed based on where they are in their transformation. And most of our sites need less attention as they get established. We don't stop working there. We don't have to work there as much, which is awesome. But this model keeps us on top of the site conditions, make sure that, you know, the invasives aren't taking over again, because a lot of them, they do start as invasive filled spots. And it also creates community ownership because we're all about creating ownership. So also important to us when deciding what to do at the site, what the goal should be is what the potential and limitations of the site are and what its initial condition is. And while I put this under site management, it also applies to the selection of our sites too. Because if it requires a lot of work, we have to really consider that, and we have to consider what the end goal is going to be too. So the criteria that we use when that guides us when choosing a site are all based around getting the most bang for our buck. We want places that are seen by a lot of people who are just going about their business. We want to be very visible. We want areas that are being underutilized because they're so overgrown with invasives or they're filled with turf grass for no good reason. And we also want to work in areas that have a bit of a nature deficit. We consider the size of the space and what it needs to thrive. That again ties back to the conditions and the goals. And we also want the people with power, the people in the community, to buy into the work that we're doing. We don't want to come in and do something that people don't want. And we do really listen to what the community has to say about what they want in their neighborhoods. And since we aren't tied to a location, we try to work with groups that are already in the neighborhood to help us build trust. Like one of our first projects, we worked with a civic association, and a member of the civic association is one of our site leaders to this day. I think almost 4 years later, maybe 3 years later. And most importantly for us, when we're thinking about picking out sites, we have to look at our own skill set. And we have to look at the resources we have, and that includes volunteer time. And we have to look at, do we have the capacity to take on another long-term commitment? And I will say that I do overcommit. That I love. I have a really, really hard time saying no. But I try to keep that up front. So what that does mean is we try to only add sites when we aren't totally maxing out our volunteers. And we're also always trying to grow our volunteer base too, so we can keep growing. But we try to, like I mentioned earlier, we tried to vary the types of sites we added. So we aren't adding two incredibly high maintenance ones at the same time. At this point, obviously we are adding an average of about 2 sites a year, but I will say that in 2025, because of what we took on this year in 2024, it's highly likely that we won't take on any new sites, any new CNPP sites. If we do, it will be one at most because of 5701, which we'll talk about more later. But so that was a lot. But since adding new CNPP managed sites is so volunteer labor intensive, in 2023, we expanded our site work to include partnerships and collaborations, site collaborations. For the collaborative work, the main difference is that we do not serve as the lead of the work. The entity which owns the site or has the relationship with the owner of the site is the lead. So CNPP commits to working alongside them in the transformation and to provide support and guidance around community engagement and stewardship. We do help with maintenance. We don't, we see these as long-term commitments as well, but the group that has the stronger tie to the site is the one that is the primary leader of it. And so, but this combining of our resources and our volunteers, because a lot of the groups that we're working with also bring volunteers, and combining our skill sets, we can get so much more done. And for us, it allows us to expand our reach further and faster than if we worked only on CNPP sites. So we currently have 4 collaborations going, one at Bishop McNamara High School, which actually that project Wild Ones helped with that. Some of the Maryland Native Plant Society board members who are members of Wild Ones helped us get funding for that project. We're working at Collington Retirement Community. They have 60 acres of a forest, and it is so super cool. We're working with their Weed Warrior program. We're working with EcoCity Farms, which is a urban teaching farm, and it has a CSA, which is fantastic. And we're also working with Friends of Bladensburg Library. We just did some container planting with them, and we're talking about in 2025, one of the things we may do, we might not do new CNPP sites, but we might help them. They have a BPM that has no plants in it, and so we might help them get that going and getting it healthy and functioning better. But how we pick our partnerships or collaborations are basically, they fall in our laps. It's just connections we make. It's kismet. It's like, do the stars align and can we work together? But one thing that all of our partnerships have in common so far is, while native planting may not be core to their mission, there is some overlap with their mission and native planting and what we do. And also later on, I'm going to talk a little bit more. We do other kind of works with other groups that aren't quite on this level of site collaboration, or aren't the same as site collaboration. They can be long-term commitments too, but they're just a bit. So, but two of the projects that we're talking about, two are collaborative sites. They are landscaped projects. The one at Bishop McNamara is a landscape space around their outdoor classroom. And again, the Friends of Bladensburg Library, we did container with them, and their BPM will probably be more landscape. Which takes us to our work on landscaping practices, or guidance that we provide around landscaping practices. And this is one of the first examples, of course, of how our divisions are more like intersectional points in a Venn diagram, because this takes us back to our sites in CNPP, having 3 landscape beds that are part of our sites. There was a 4th, it had to be removed because of construction, and we'll probably be adding that back again when the construction's done. But so these sites demonstrate how using natives doesn't have to result in a wild and crazy space, and that natives can be used for a more traditional landscape aesthetic. 2 of our landscape beds, one in front of the Cheverly Community Center and one in front of its police station, have won Prince George's County's Beautification Committee's awards for community entrances and common spaces. I think I got that correctly. So they're gorgeous. What can we say? We also use these beds, while we start with the current aesthetic, we're also trying to move the needle. We're trying to move the current aesthetic to one that is more ecologically sound. So like, we're letting the plantings fill in and become very, very dense. And we're trying to use as little mulch as possible. We're trying to, do the cues to care. We're going to keep the cues to care, but we're just trying to shift into a better space. And in the winter, we leave the leaves, the stems, the stalks, and the seeds, so that, they can be they can be habitat and feeding the birds and all the good critters and all that stuff. So, beyond our landscape sites, we also do yard consultations. We mostly, and they're free. If you put in a request, we come out and talk to you. So most of our consults are with homeowners, but we've also worked with some local institutions, probably about 5 or 6, maybe a little more. And although we haven't been asked yet, we'd be happy to work with tenants who are interested in working with their property owners, the people who own their buildings, on creating native plant based spaces at their buildings. We also conduct 2 shrub sales a year. One is in the spring, which is open to the public, and we do in conjunction with the Cheverly Garden Club, who does a plant sale at the same time. And we do one in the fall that is specifically for our members and for participants in our 2-for-1 trade, which I'll tell you more about in just a few minutes. An important point to note about our shrub sales is that we try to keep the prices as low as possible so that our prices, what we're getting shrub for, are comparable to the price of non-natives and invasives that you can get at big box stores. That's who we're competing with. We're not competing with the fabulous native nurseries out there, and we are always encouraging people to go to those, and that's where they should be sourcing most of their plants. But CNPP members and our 2-for-1 traders in the fall can also buy the shrubs at cost to CNPP. In the spring sale, we do tack on a few dollars for non-members, and that helps us fund our programs. It also, but the price is still way below retail. And the reason we can offer them so cheaply is because we only sell twice a year. We aren't a nursery. We don't have overhead costs. We don't have staff. We don't have all the things that they have to do so that they can keep going on a much larger scale than what we're doing. And also because having only 2 sales a year and limiting the fall one to just our members and the 2-for-1 traders, it means we can manage the work that goes along with sales. Sales are incredibly labor intensive. They are so much work. But it's a fun thing that we've added, and it's just a way that we're trying to make native planting just a little more affordable. So now let me just tell you a little bit about our 2-for-1 trades. And this is one of my favorite programs, and we need to give a hat tip to the Cape Conservation Corps because we modeled our trade after a similar program that they run for their community. How the trade works is that each year, for a set number of people, we give away 2 native shrubs in exchange for the participants, for them for removing at least 1 invasive shrub from their property. If folks want more info about this program, we can do that more in the chat. And while we encourage the participants to take out more than 1 shrub, we only do 1 trade per household or per home. And in other words, we only give away 2 free shrubs. I wish we could do more, but budget. But the biggest catch is, and it's not even really a catch, it's just they just have to come to a party in Cheverly, Maryland to pick up their free shrubs. And that's part of to help motivate them taking out the more shrubs and to do the trek. Like I said, we do the fall shrub sale at the same time, so they can purchase more shrubs at a really discounted rate at the same time. And then they also get to meet and talk with plant people, talk to experts, and they get materials about native planting and about ecologically sound landscaping practices, all the good stuff, and they get to eat and drink. Also, I should say too, we do the trade with a few institutions each year, and for them we can go, I think the most we've ever given to an institution is like 6 shrubs. So besides the shrubs, the 2-for-1 trade making us feel like we're a combo of, Santa and Oprah, the thing that I love most about the trade is that it isn't just about the importance of native plants, but it also starts the conversation with folks about invasives. And it's always surprising to me, but I guess it shouldn't be. Just thinking of my own experience, is a frequent question that we got in the 3 years that I was in charge of the program were things like, do I really have to get rid of my invasive shrub, or can I give it away? Can I plant it somewhere else? And that gave us an opening to start saying, well, here's what's going on with invasives and why we're focusing not just on getting native plants in the ground, but getting rid of the invasives as well. And at this point, I am going to do a plug for the Mid-Atlantic plant invaders that Judy and Jill Swearinger wrote. Maryland Native Plant Society sells them for, I think it's only $7 a piece. They're beautiful. They're lovely. You all should get a copy and take it with you everywhere. Anyway, so and so the trade is also because we talk to these people, and we have so many of our master gardeners and naturalists, and we have a bunch of native plant people who know way more than I do. They get this is a time we can provide, extensive support and conversation with newbies to the native plant world and help them navigate all sorts of new information. And so, as you noticed, we have focused on shrubs, and I'm sure some of you have a question. Why are you focused on shrubs? Why do we want a shrubbery? And shrubs are, being the middle layer, shrubs are really, really like the middle child. They are the Jan Brady of our natural areas, and they're often overlooked by a variety of programs and giveaways. I mean, people just don't really think about shrubs. There are tons of herbaceous plant and seed giveaways. Everybody loves planting a pollinator plot. That's one of the first things we did. They are the Cindy Brady of the plant world. They're just so cute. And then the trees are like the Marcia of restoration programs. It seems like there's million tree giveaway. And don't get me wrong, I am not slamming them. I'm just having a little bit of fun. I fully support all the attention that the pollinator plots and the trees are getting. They need to get that attention. And CNPP dabbles in plant giveaways and in herbaceous plant giveaways and with tree giveaways too. Just we don't do that much. With shrubs, we saw a niche that needed filling and that we could do. We have, as Judy was talking about earlier, we have this very serious problem with the shrub layer. And like the trees, shrubs are not cheap. We need to start getting more native shrubs out there, and we need to get rid of the Nandina and the barberry and the honeysuckle, and we want to motivate people to get rid of them. And we need to start filling that gap and elevating the conversation about all the layers that are needed and mimicking them in our own yards too. And these conversations, it's all about, the Venn diagram again, it's all about education and outreach, our third way of engaging community members. So education and outreach, like many groups, they can be divided in what we do with kids or youth and what we do with adults. And so the work we do at school is pretty typical: plantings, weeding. We actually don't do tons and tons of work at school. We've hosted days of service, and we've done field trips with school too. We also have a slew of students who do service hours with us. And they do it either as for their school or for Scouts. And with Scouts, we've also worked with them on a number of different projects and badges. And currently, we're helping a couple Girl Scouts with their silver badges, and we're helping one scout with his Eagle Scout project. And I want to say that when we work with kids and when we do field trips, we put them to work. We don't play around. And we warn them before they come out, they are going to get dirty. It's going to be hard. And most of the time, they absolutely love it. And I get it, because a lot of the stuff we do, we actually have them do a lot of invasive removal. And invasive removal is my absolute favorite thing of all of this. I could do it all day long. And absolutely forget smash rooms. Who needs a smash room when you can go out and tackle invasives? And it's so rewarding to me, at least. And I personally think that instead of volunteers, we should be charging people to come out and have this fun. So, and as I mentioned too, this is where I'll just touch on, we frequently pair up with other groups, like-minded groups, on specific projects like Earth Day cleanups or plant swaps. And we have ongoing relationships with a number of them, and a number of them are the ones that are tied to sites. Like we work a lot with Friends of Lower Beaver Dam Creek. We work with Friends of Quincy Run, kind of stuff. So I do want to put a little bit more attention to adults. And Obviously, the vast majority of work that we do would be considered outreach to adults. And rather than rehashing and expanding on what we do, I'd like to share a little bit about how we approach them and how that is tied to who our audience is. And generally, our audience are not people that you're going to find on a presentation like this. Our audience are not people who necessarily know the importance of native plants. We are trying to engage community members who haven't heard of them. I mean, of course, we welcome the people who know a lot, and we work with them all the time, and we really appreciate them. But our focus is on expanding the tent and reaching people who aren't necessarily thinking about the ecological health of their backyard. And these can be first-time homeowners, people who love their manicured lawn and think all green is created equal. And then there are also those who, heard a little bit of something and they're dipping their toes in the water, like the people who think protecting pollinators is all about the honeybee, and dandelions are amazing because they're the first food source in the spring. And yes, I know those aren't, we'll get back to that and we'll explain how we actually use that. And this all probably states the obvious, but we really, really try to get to know our audience. And we try to keep where they're at the front of our work. We listen to them so we can figure out exactly where they're at so we can meet them there and not where we think they should be or where we want them to be. And that can be a lot harder than it seems, because a lot of times our bias is that everyone knows what we know, or they should know everything we know. And I've heard this so many times, and not necessarily from plant people, but I can't tell you how many times I have heard things like, you don't know that? You haven't heard that? And it's related to something that somebody's an expert in or something they're really interested in. And it doesn't feel great to have somebody say that to you. So when we do that, and it is frequently unintentionally or an automatic response, we have reversed the starting point by thinking they should have a knowledge base, the knowledge base that we actually want to impart. We need to do a 180 by being aware and constantly reminding ourselves that to bring people in, we have to start with what they know, not what we want them to know. And I'm going to keep saying that multiple times. And this goes back to what helps me keep this up front, and it goes back to the honeybee and the dandelion, is I used to cringe, not internally, not externally. I would cringe when I would hear people talking about how important they are. And then I realized that I needed to reframe it. Like, this bad information that they have is my foot in the door. Honeybees and dandelions are like the gateway drug to native plants, native pollinators, and environmental stewardship, and we got to take advantage of that. So rather than telling them everything they know is wrong, and don't believe everything you see on in the gardening groups, I tell them, and this is quite honest, about how that's where I started too, and what I've learned since. This is where me not being an expert comes in handy. Being a dabbler myself comes to my advantage at this point. So admitting I fell for it too, admitting that I took it, because I saw a meme, it's got to be true, right? It also changes the dynamic of the relationship that I have with the people that we're working with. I don't position myself as someone who's going to teach them, but I position myself as someone who's learning right alongside them. But I maybe started a bit before they did on this journey, and we're in it together. We're trying to do better as we learn more, as we learn better. And I'm kind of like a, native plant equivalent to an AA sponsor. I'm helping these people along their journey because I've been there. I know what it's like to not know what you're doing. And this also helps us make sure that there's no shame in learning. And this is another unintentional thing that happens quite a bit. It also helps them understand that you don't have to be a botanist. You don't have to be a horticulturalist to be into native plants. Again, we don't want people feeling bad when they're learning. When they feel bad when they're learning, they shy away, they shut down. And we don't bring them on board. We want to open them up, and we want to show that they're welcome too, and that it's okay that they don't know what they're doing right now, because we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. And so we put a very concerted effort to make sure embracing natives and moving away from non-natives is a positive experience, because when we build people up, we build up our mission too. So now, if you want to talk about this, our knowing our audience is the burger, what's the special sauce? And like what's the secret sauce? What's the secret sauce? There is the original secret sauce. It's just ketchup and mayo and relish, garlic, a little black pepper. And in other words, I don't think there's really anything unique or special about what we do. Many of you probably use the same guiding principles that we think is behind our success. And we do think what we've done has been really successful, especially for a teeny tiny group like us. We are very intentional about how we go about our work. As an organization, we don't have an official set of values yet. We do want to do that eventually, hopefully this year. But core to everything we do, and something we talk about a lot, is that what we do should be fun, and we do have a fun time. We are all volunteers, and then if we want to get people out there and keep them coming back, we can't rely on the feeling of obligation to save the planet. To get there, and this is also like with fundraising. If you're going to make people feel like when you do the heartstrings plea, you get donors one time, but if you want to keep them coming back, you want them to have a positive feeling about the group. We can talk more about that later if people are interested. But to get them out, to get our volunteers out, to get people joining us and doing the hard and dirty work, we do that by making sure folks are having a good time. And that helps us build a sense of belonging and ownership in our projects. We get people invested in the success of the work we do together. So it's not just CNPP's thing, it's the communities. And with community building, creating opportunities for people getting involved is vital. And the opportunities just create themselves, but we need to make sure people know about them. We have to get the word out about what and how people can help us. It's really hard. It takes a lot of work to get helpers. But another thing to keep in mind, this has been researched extensively, that don't forget to do the direct ask. People are more likely to take on a task and get involved if they are personally asked to do something. General appeals, which are unavoidable, I do them all the time, are way less effective. You want to say, hey, Joe, can you help me? I need you can you do this? And you're more likely to get a yes than if you say, hey, group, will you help out is anybody available to help with this? And central to organizing, this is a core organizing principle, and community engagement is to make sure that you have successes. And this goes into our criteria of why we pick the sites that we do. We want to make sure that we can meet our goals and declare victory. And it's not just about the ribbon cutting at the end. That's hugely important, but successes also need to be celebrated along the way. That's why you got to take the before and after pictures. You got to count the plants that are going into the ground. We have to get better about counting the plants that are going into the ground. And it's also about all the social media posts and getting the word out there and doing it in a very positive, look what we're building, look what we're doing. Isn't this just fantastic? You got to be a cheerleader and throw parties. And so it's not just with the volunteers, but with the broader community and with decision makers. It's really important that we're also working on building trust. And this goes back to like working with groups in the community. who are already established in the community. If we want to change perceptions and build a movement, we have to make sure we have to make ourselves people to be trusted. And I'm going to give you an example of one of our first projects, our pollinator plot. When we started, we were an unknown quantity, and we were met with a lot of skepticism. People really had no idea what we could do and if we were just going to make a mess of things. So when we approached the town of Chevrolet, which is, again, where we started, that's why you're hearing Chevrolet a lot, about creating a pollinator plot, the space that they gave us, not only was it so it's in between two buildings, it's down a path, the entryway of the path has a sign that says authorized personnel only, so nobody goes down there. And not only is it down this path, it's behind a shed down this path. So nobody can see it unless you're back there, and nobody's going back there, right? So obviously, rather than cry, nobody puts baby in a corner, because man, did they put baby in a corner with that one. We took it. And we turned that cruddy patch of turf grass into a gorgeous and thriving and well-kept pollinator plot. And then seeing what we can do, I have a great picture of our town administrator looking at it, and he just has this wonderful smile on his face, and he's so excited. And seeing what we could do, then he approached us and said, hey, can you do some of the landscape beds in front of our buildings? And what's more visible than that? So while this pollinator plot did not meet our visibility criteria, it helped us establish trust with the community. And now that goes to we found an ally. We have created allies who will champion for us and champion our work. And you want to make sure that we want to make sure we do this. We make sure that we're nurturing that relationship as much as we can, because we need, and even when we have tough times with them, because we do have tough times with them, we want them to go to bat for us. And I also want to stress, because, it can be hard when you're working with people who aren't on the same page as you. We don't have to let the nonsense fly, but we don't want to focus on all the adversarial relationships and the problems that are out there. We want to frame it as the positive. There are too many potential fights to have, and if we don't have to, we don't want to waste our time on them. So don't start with a petition. Start with an ask. Start with trying to get, see if there's something they've been thinking about. It's trying to get to know your audience with the decision makers. And when we focus on building these positive relationships, it helps us a lot more in the long run. And at some points, you may have to do a petition. You may have to, take on the fight. But just remember to spend more of your energy working on the good stuff. So now let's just go back to the reel. And this is about our messaging. The reason I decided, because I was going back and forth on, do I share this hokey little reel? And I decided, yeah, because that's our elevator pitch. We took elevator pitch to a new level, but we're hoping that reflects what CNPP is about. It tells you what we do, but it tells you in a way that shows we want to have fun. We're goofy, we're approachable. We have a bunch of different stuff going on for a bunch of different interests. And so that, that's one way. You got to keep telling people who you are in a way that really reflects your brand. And we do have branded material too. Like almost everything we do is branded material. And we choose shapes and colors and all that stuff very much on purpose, and because we have smart people who figure these things out. But anyway, okay, so for us, again, like we said, success to us, it's not just about numbers. It's about getting scientifically backed facts about natives to your average Joe and Jane and Everytown USA and bring more folks on board, right? But for fun and to celebrate a bit, and because I have to track this stuff for grants anyway, let's take a look at some of the numbers. Okay, remember, CNPP is a tiny, tiny little organization. And in 2024 alone, all these numbers are just from 2024, we've held 77 work sessions at our sites or for our programs. And this doesn't include the behind the scenes planning meetings, the board meetings, all the, administrative type stuff. And it doesn't include the independent work that our site leaders are doing. We have had 187 unique adults and youth volunteers help us this year. And some have come out once, some have come out dozens of times. Some are new this year, some have been with us since the beginning. At our two newest sites alone, one which we started work in February and the other in June, we have put in 676 hours on site. And that accounts for just 35 of our 77 work sessions. We have provided free assistance to over 80 homeowners through our various programs. That doesn't include our shrubs sales because that's not free, and I don't know how many people we sold to. So, and we've collaborated on or done joint projects with at least 17 organizations. There may be more. I realized I wasn't tracking them as well as I should. Again, we've won 2 awards for our sites, and our volunteers won Volunteers of the Year award from the town of Cheverly. Yay, we celebrate them. They did a great job. And we have this year got 557 native shrubs into the ground, tons of native perennials, and a good dozen or so trees. So these are all things to celebrate. They may be small potatoes to some people, but they're really big and really important to us, and we're really excited about it. Now, to wrap everything all up, I want to talk just a little bit. Here's our little Venn diagram about 5701 Landover Road. And this is definitely the intersection of all of what CNPP does and how it comes together. This is, so the short story of this is, let's see, this is the before picture. This is 5701 in January. So when we started 4 years ago, CNPP, there's 3 of us, we were out looking for sites, and we went and we looked at 5701, and it's a corner lot. It's highly visible. It is 1/3 of an acre. It's owned by the town of Cheverly, who we have a relationship with. It's highly visible. It's in a historically neglected part of the county. With no usable green space or park, and it's separated from the rest of the community of Cheverly. Like almost so many people don't even know it's part of Cheverly because it's literally on the other side of the BW Parkway. It met all of our criteria for sites except our ability to take it on. We took one look at it and said, no way, absolutely not. It was in such bad shape. We couldn't tell where to begin. It had been used for illegal construction dumping. It had been used for illegal landscaping dumping for decades. I think one of our board leaders found pictures of it back to, I think it was the 1960s or 1970s, and it was just a nothing space used for nothing except for dumping until it became so overgrown with invasives that it was impossible to get on. I would say, I don't know, 80% of the site. Like there was like one mowed path to a bunch of illegally dumped trees that were there, but otherwise you couldn't get on past, so we couldn't even evaluate what it was. So fast forward 4 years, we have more experience, we have a bigger volunteer base, we have more expert connection, and now we need a new site. So our thoughts turned back to 5701, and a landscape designer with Anacostia Watershed Society asked about partnering up and if we had a site, and we said, yeah, we do. We got the town on board and we were ready to go. So on February 1st, we held our first work session to see if we could get on site to see what condition it was. We called in Joe's Movement Emporium's Creative Green team to help us out because they have these are people, it's a green jobs training program in Prince George's County. And then, so 10 months later, 28 work sessions later, 109 volunteers later, 598 hours on site later, and I want to present to you 5701 Landover Road today. So you'll notice the work's not done. This is just we've done probably about 90% of the invasive removal, and the 2 trees that you see that still have all the ivy on it, that's also mixed with poison ivy. And so we're going to do it someday. We're going to get the English ivy off, but we're just it's not going to be fun. And that pile that looks like just a little pile, it's huge. It's a massive pile of construction dumping that was scattered throughout that entire site. And our volunteers hauled it all to the entrance by wheelbarrow. And it's going to, when we get all of it, because we still have about 2%, maybe 5% left, when we get it all together, then the town of Cheverly is going to move it away. But I mean, it's just unbelievable. We do have a grant. We have done multiple forms of community outreach. We've held community design charrettes. We've done tabling. We've done poster boards. We've flyered the immediate neighbors multiple times. We've flyered 87 of the broader neighbors at least once. We have signs. We have QR codes to Google Forms to give input. So I think our input, sorry, I didn't look it up. I know it's well over 100. I don't think it's quite, I think it's probably around 125, 150. We've had input from about that many unique individuals. The initial landscape design has been drafted, and we're going to be presenting it to the community in January to get the second round of feedback. And we are going to be implementing a design, turning this into a welcoming and beautiful park, native plant-based park for a community that did not have a usable green space just, for 40 years, 40 plus years. We're just so happy. And this is the perfect example of conjunction junction. What's your function? It's making stuff like this happen. And it is a blast. I am so happy to be part of this group, and I appreciate you all indulging me. And I look forward more to this part than I did to my presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. There are some questions. Michael, were you raising your hand there?
Sure. That was a really interesting talk. I'm so glad to hear about this group and fantastic work only in 4 years of existence. It's really impressive. I'm involved with Friends of Sligo Creek in lower Montgomery County. The creek goes through Montgomery and Prince George's. I'm wondering if when you're meeting people where they are, with honeybees and dandelions, if you find that they respond somehow to the inherent value of just the concept of a plant being native as opposed to being brought in, if that's enough, or if it works even better, or if it's too complicated to explain that our native insects, most of them won't eat the non-natives, or they won't lay their eggs on the non-natives, or even though they'll eat the fruits of the non-natives. Do you find that distinction is too complicated, or you bring it up later? I'm just wondering how you approach what you mentioned, the ecological value of natives in, the Doug Tallamy, 3-step plant, caterpillar, bird scheme, or any other scheme. How do you handle that? Thanks.
So it's really individualized as much as possible, but a lot of people get it pretty quickly. I'm trying to think of ways that I paraphrase it, and I'm not being able to do it out of context, and I apologize for that, because it is so individualized. Some people get it right away. Some people think that, if you're planting flowers, then you're automatically, feeding, the insects that are around. And, so it is introducing them to, no, not all plants are created equal. Here's what I learned. Here's what I found out. I think about like when the first time that I wanted to start a pollinator plot, and I said it to some friends and some friends who know about native plants, and like they were pulling up at my house with butterfly weed and mountain mint, and they're like, hey, if you want to attract them, if you want to feed them, here's what you do. And it's kind of like, oh, okay, really? Oh, I didn't understand that. Because a lot of people don't know. They think honeybee, and that's the only bee they know that they can identify. And so when you tell them there's 450 different kinds of bees um, in Maryland alone, it's kind of like, really? Yeah, and then you just build the conversation and you follow them. So I guess part of like why I'm having a hard time with this is I follow their lead, so it just depends on where they are and the base that they already have out there. I'm sorry if that's not a great answer. So
Liz, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I haven't gotten a clear sense of what the group is. I mean, there are a lot of volunteers, but and like who is the group that manages all of this and organizes charrettes and designs leaflets and things like that?
yeah.
One,
So
and then two, what kind of grants are you getting? Because I know a lot about, there's a lot of money for trees, but I haven't heard of money for, native plants per se and, things. Anyway, so what kind of grants are you getting? Thank you.
right. So our group is volunteer run, 100% volunteer run, and the people who drive everything is our board of directors, who do most of the work. And we get people who will volunteer expertise on different things. Like we have a few visual things that were made by artists. Our logo was made by an artist who volunteered to do it. She was a teenager at the time that she did it. So it's our volunteers who do it. I do this 40 hours a week. This is a full-time job for me as a volunteer. And I'm okay with that. But like the design charrette, that's where, when we're working in partnership, like the person who did that is a landscape designer who has a master's in landscape architecture. And he was with Anacostia Watershed Society, one of our partners in our 5701 project. And so we got his expertise, and he's being paid to do that through the grant that we had for that program is and it's kind of complicated because it got sub-funded by somebody else, but it's a Chesapeake Bay Trust grant, one of their greening communities grants. But it was also paid because we're in Prince George's County. The Prince George's Department of Environment is paying for half of that grant. We get grants. We have a grant from the town of Cheverly. We have where else have we received money, a grant from a local, American Legion. We've received Keep Maryland Beautiful grants. So there's a bunch of different things out there that you can get funding. There are things through, like in Prince George's County, through the rain check rebate program where we could apply for funding. We haven't done it yet. That's a capacity issue. So the funds are out there. It's just piecing them together.
That's much clearer now. So just to sum up, like how many volunteers or how many board members do you have that would say work 20 hours a week or more? You work 40, but
right.
are there others that are working 40? Are there some that are working 20 hours a week? Or are we talking about?
Yeah, and I think part of no, I would say no. I'm the only one who's doing this full time, and it's kind of because I'm so in love with it and I'm kind of nutty. But like the person who's running our shrub sales and who's running our 2-for-1 trade, when she has a project going, she's working, I would say a good 10 hours a week, if not more. So it just depends. We have some site leaders who they're not on our board. Our site leaders are volunteers who we get from the community, and like the ones who are managing our landscape beds, they're going out, probably, I would say one of them goes out probably twice a week to go do work. And part of it is she loves it. And if you combine there's three of them there's two official leaders and one unofficial leader who's doing that work. And I would say combined, they do 10 plus hours a week at those sites. So, but yeah, I mean, one of the things that we are working on and that we're running up against is we do have to get staffed. We know that. So, and it's just, we've only had our own nonprofit status for about 15 months. So we're working in that direction.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Linda, did you want to go ahead and unmute?
Sure. Well, I think I know the answer to this question. I live in Baltimore County, and we've converted our yard into a native landscape that supports wildlife, and we use a lot of shrubs. So I love your emphasis on shrubs. Our yard backs up against a stream that is extremely neglected and has suffered for years from massive erosion. And I think many people live near streams. So I'm wondering if your organization does any, stream restoration for suburban landscapes. It's a lot of private residences that are backing up against these streams, and there's trash in them. A lot of them are in very bad shape. So I don't know, they're not highly visible. That's the only, it doesn't, yeah, just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I mean, I think if I were you, I'm happy to talk with you more about it, but it's like a stream restoration, I think, is a very specific term. And so you have to be careful about that. But I think, one of our mentors of our program has worked very extensively on doing work around a tributary. And I think you have the potential, if you're working with your neighbors, of coming together and doing something around it together, organizing around that and becoming, looking into more of what you can do that is low impact measures to increase the health of the stream without, calling in the big guns kind of stuff. So.
Narayan, I don't know if I pronounced that right. Do you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. And that's my son's first name, actually. So Chris. But Diane, I thought fantastic presentation. I really enjoyed it. So one thing that worries me though is so many of the places I get to go have lots of dead ash trees, dead oak trees, lots of big dead branches all over. And I'm almost worried to take people there because of safety. So what do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, safety is always an issue. It is an issue, like in areas that we're working where there's dead trees. I'm thinking of, like at the Chevrolet Nature Park where we've worked, we won't work on windy days. And we eventually had so many of the trees fell down that we did have a number of them were cut down because they were dangerous. I'm trying to think. So the site that we're working at, 5701, there are a lot of potential hazards there. So we have everybody sign waivers. We do go through, don't pull the vines down from the tree branches. We try to guide people, and you do have to be aware of your surroundings and be as smart as you can. I mean, we do tell people, things like wear your sturdy shoes, wear your sturdy clothes, because we do get people who come out in Crocs and who come out in leggings. And we had one girl come out. This was a day of service for a high school, and she was wearing slippers. And this was on a site that has, probably 10,000 plus broken bottles and bottles on the site. In addition to all sorts of thorny things going on. So you do the best that you can in trying to alleviate all, or to mitigate all the potential hazards. So yeah, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm failing on the answers, but yeah, you try to keep things as safe as you can and just realize and let people know the dangers beforehand. We also will do things like if it's a rainy day, like there's places we work on, we won't work on super muddy rainy days because we don't want to compact soils, and also like if there's steep slopes, you don't want people sliding down them. So we have not had anybody except for me get hurt at sites, and I mean, well, we've had poison ivy issues, but otherwise I think I saw one of our board members on Dave. I don't think we've had anybody hurt at any of our sites at this point.
Lisa, did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, hi, thank you. So my question is about how the relationships with new sites are initiated. I know you mentioned that one with its such high visibility that it kind of drew in some interest from others. But in general, are you approaching different sites because you're seeking them out, or are other people coming to your group for help? And then I don't know if you touched on it. I'm sorry if you did. What was your first project? How did that get started?
Yeah, our first project was, so my house backs up to a park, and this was during the pandemic, and it was completely filled with honeysuckle vines and a bunch of other things, porcelain berry, all the main characters in the invasive world. And we approached the Green Infrastructure Committee in our town and asked them if this is something we could tackle, and we got permission from the town administrator to do it. And it was and for me, it was interest, and there's a running track that's right there, so you can see it. And then like our next site, one of our board members, this was at American Legion post that's in town, and he wanted to do a meadow there, and he has a relationship with the group. We do get approached by other groups, we get approached by other groups, and we talk to them, and we figure out if we can work together. And those may not necessarily turn into CNPP sites. They may be the collaborative sites that we work on. So they come about in a variety of ways. We've had a number of people, like when we started working at the Chevrolet Nature Park, that came from people approaching us and telling us to do it, and or asking us to do it. And we had people who said they would be the site leaders for it. And so we said, sure, we can take it on, because we would have the capacity if they were taking lead on it. And unfortunately, the initial people fell through, but we did have somebody else who was available and who did a lot of the work on it. So it is a word of mouth thing. I'm always on the lookout. I mean, if I had my way, I would be doing every single site that I could, but every site that I see, I'd be on the side of highways, pulling everything if I could. But yeah, so they come to us through word of mouth, through people like you. And then we just evaluate as a team. We take it back to the board and we figure out, is this something we can take on? Can we do it ourselves? Can we do it with another group? What can we make this happen at this time? So we have had to turn people down, and we've had to turn projects down. We have one person who wants to do a project that could be manageable, but I think, it's just not happening, and there's no real reason, it's for whatever reason, it's not becoming a reality, but we're open to talking to folks all the time. So
Bradley, did you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. I was, as someone who does invasive removal, I'm always inspired to see the before after pictures, and it made me think about the methods that you and your volunteers are using when you're at your locations and your sites doing invasive removal. Is it all mechanical removal, or do you have approval to use some sort of chemical? I know that's challenging with volunteers and the locations you're working in.
Right. So, and Bradley, I don't know if you know, yeah, I've taken classes from you.
Mhm.
So hello. When I did my master naturalist training, I think you were the one who did the native plant class, if I remember
Yep.
correctly. So, anyway, so we do all manual mechanical, for the most part. So we do have, a licensed herbicide applicator who will do spraying with us and who guides us in the removal that he wants us to do before he will do very, very, very targeted, very limited
Mhm.
spraying. So like,
Mhm.
as you know, with wisteria, you can't get rid of it without
Yeah.
full intervention. And so we spent hundreds of hours getting the wisteria down to 1 foot above the ground, and then went through and he would snip and spray. And he did this
Mm.
on 1.5 acres for us, but we got it down so far that he could do this. And now, and and he guided us too. He's done this stuff a lot. Like he said, don't expect this to go away in a year. You have to, it's going to be 3 years at least,
Mhm.
man. And he was absolutely right. So, but we are down to the spot again. The one place that wisteria is trying to make a comeback is around laurels that we did not spray around, that we did all mechanical removal. And so we're going to
As someone who's tried to hand pull wisteria, I understand the
yeah.
challenges alongside. They have ridiculous roots. I will mention that there is a chemical out there that's specific to only woody legumes,
Uh-huh.
called Transline, and we've used it at Woodend Sanctuary, Nature Forest property. We had a wisteria climbing pawpaw. We sprayed the wisteria that was on the pawpaw. Pawpaw looks beautiful. Wisteria is gone.
That's
So
awesome.
for the ones that are more challenging around the native plants that are very desirable, highly recommend looking into that methodology.
That sounds great. And again, I just want to stress, at least in Prince George's County, I don't know if this is a Maryland law, and maybe somebody else can say, if it's not your property, you can't spray. You need to have a licensed person spray. And so, and they have very specific regulations that they have to go by. We do know folks on other projects who go out and spray. You cannot, at least in Prince George's County, you cannot spray off your property unless you are licensed. So, and if you work with somebody who's licensed, try to find somebody who's, who has the same mindset that you do, who's not going to do, wide swath spraying, but who's going to be super, super targeted and do, put the least amount of chemical out there as that's necessary.
So Diane, this is Judy. What you're referring to in terms of what certifications are needed, that's Maryland-wide, not just
It is
PG.
okay. I thought it was, but I didn't want to speak out of school. So thank you for clarifying.
Now, Virginia recently had a law passed that said that volunteers with supervision can actually use herbicides as long as they're herbicides that are generally available at places like the big box stores. That would be something that we might want to have the law changed in Maryland.
Right. I'm kind of skeptical of that, but I would like to learn more. So, because it does put a damper on things. It makes it hard to do, but and I've thought about getting my license just so I can go out there and do it, because we do need more people who are environmentally focused to be doing this kind of work.
Patricia, do you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
Yes, I live in a senior residence in Rockville, and we recently had shrubs that had some weeds growing up in them, and the landscaper contractors sprayed thinking like spraying lawns for broadleaf greens, they could just kill the weeds, and they killed the shrubs. And this is about 12.5 small 1.5 foot high shrubs. They were replaced by this new holly olive that's been marked as one of the new invasives in the capital area. And I want to get them taken out. And I haven't been successful yet in getting anybody to push back on getting them out. But what are the what are the native shrubs? Do you have a list of native shrubs that you are suggesting people use, or that you use when you do the 2-for-1 swaps? And I'm not suggesting you do a 2-for-1 for 12.5 little shrubs, but
Right.
just like to know what's on the list.
Well, so I will tell you that we did, in our 2-for-1, we did just give another retirement community 6 shrubs, one that we're working with because to their Weed Warrior program. So our shrub list changes every year of what we offer, both through our sales and through the 2-for-1 trade. We actually, Jill Swearingen, who was a board member with Maryland Native Plant Society, she helps us come up with our list every year.
Okay.
And yeah, and also Barry Stahl, we always run our list by him too. So what we try to do is get a variety of like 6 to 8 different shrubs that meet the various conditions, the various growing conditions, so that people have an option that will work where they go. And we do, for the 2-for-1 trade, we keep it under 8 options, just because we found that when we gave people too many options, it just became chaotic. For the sales that we do, we keep it to about 10 shrubs, and we always we do straight species, and we try to do ones we're not as good at, we're trying to do this, but we're not perfect with this, of trying to do ones that are specific to where most of the people are, that are native to the very, very specific region that they are. But because we have people coming from Ellicott City, and we had somebody from Charles County come, all that stuff. So we're a little more flexible, and also because a lot of the spaces that we're working with are really degraded spaces anyway. So we're getting it better. We're not getting it perfect. We're getting it better. So
Good, thank you. The list, or I can find any list on your website of the suggested shrubs, or?
No, so we don't have a suggested list. So if you were looking for a suggested list, and I think this is the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay has you can do a search on, they have a resources page that has a native plant and resources, and you can put in criteria and things that you're looking for, and they'll give you suggestions.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also like to mention that the 2023 law, the Maryland Native Plants Program law, part of that is putting together a list of commercially available native species in all taxa. So all types, shrubs, herbaceous, etc. And that is currently in draft form, and we expect it to be released by the end of the year or the beginning of the year. And in fact, Lisa, who's coordinating that, Lisa Cooter, is currently on the call. Do you want to say anything about that list?
Sure. Yes, the list is coming along. It's going to be it's going to be pretty expansive, including benefits to wildlife, tolerances, seasonal interest, etc. So we hope that it'll prove very helpful, not only for industry, but for, well, all Marylanders. So yes, we're very excited about that, and we'll make sure that once it's released, that you have access to it.
And Lisa, you also had a question you want to go ahead and ask?
Sure. First, Diane, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very encouraging. I just had a quick question. I did arrive late, and I'm sorry if you addressed this early on in the presentation. But I was wondering about the long-term maintenance, because I feel like there's so many great projects, and then one of the challenges long-term is who maintains it? How do you keep, volunteers coming back to maintain that, as well as starting new projects?
Yeah, I mean, and that is a challenge. I mean, it's always, the challenge is whenever you're running a volunteer-based project is keeping them coming back. And so we do, so like I said, for each site that we take on, we have site leaders who get assigned to that site, or who volunteer to work on that site. And we try to give them as much ownership as possible with the site. We do support them. We have people who have various skill levels, some who can just do everything independently, and other people who need you to talk them through. But even if a site leader moves on, then it comes back to our core leadership team, and we work on it, and we pay attention to what's going on with it until we can find more, we can build up and bring in more leadership to take it on, and help out with it. And again, because of one of the beauties of native plantings is they're generally not high maintenance things. So as things get more established, they need less attention from us. But we continue monitoring them, and we'll go back and we'll do things, and we have adaptive management plans and work on them. So.
All right. I think that we only have a couple more questions in the chat. We did have a question from Nancy Gladden. She said, I know that you said that CNPP is a nonprofit and you mentioned grants. I'm wondering how you derive funding for your shrub giveaways and also for purchasing natives for your working sites.
Right. So we're scrappy. We know how to make money, little money go a long way. Because we can buy it wholesale, we get our shrubs very inexpensively, and all our plants we buy wholesale. I want to say all. How do we pay for it? We pay for things through membership. We pay for things through, we have a raffle. We have fundraising drives. We cobble together, money just like any other nonprofit does. We try to look for, different ways of getting funded whenever we can. It's hard. People don't like doing fundraising. People who are at least what I've found is people who are interested in the stuff that I'm interested in don't like doing fundraising. They like doing the actual work. So, yeah, I'm sorry. And what other, so we have a grant. We have there's a bunch of small grants that are out there. The Wild Ones has done grants. I know Ursinga does grants. I know Sierra Club does small grants. There's a bunch of different places out there to get these things funded. But for our 2-for-1 trade, it's mostly funded through the raffles and our raffle, by the way, is native plants or native shrubs mostly. So we raffled your book too, Judy. So we raffled, we raffle things that are directly related to our cause. But yeah, we cobble together the money. We do, right now we're at 75 participants in the 2-for-1 trade a year. And so that's a few $1,000s for us. So it's not tons and tons of money, and we make it work.
We have one more from Patricia.
I just wanted to say this has been so absolutely inspirational, just a phenomenal story. I'm just so excited for all you're doing. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. We really do have a blast doing this. I don't feel like I feel like Zoom is hard to capture the energy that we feel, and we invite you all to come out and have fun with us at one of our sites. So
A.G. Kerber. Do you want to go ahead and unmute?
My question is the type of natives trees or shrubs that you give. Like I'm in Howard County in Columbia, and I've gotten some giveaways from the Howard County, well, from Columbia and also from the county government. My concern is that some of these natives have been hybridized or changed in such a way, and that they're not, it's been shown that sometimes they're not as useful
Right.
for the vegetation. And, you know, in my yard, I have a native dogwood and I have one that I bought, and I like the native one better. And I have a native red bud, and I'm hoping the one that I got the giveaway is not a, you know, a more, you know, whatever you call some kind of variety, because it doesn't fit into the woodland scene that I want to do with that red, but that's to do for it. I put in some pawpaws, and my first pawpaw was very slow in growing. And then I got another one, of course, because you have to have two. And this one grew like, 3 or 4 times higher than the other. And it was, so I suspect it's more of a hybridization or something like that. And as a result, I think, you know, my pawpaws have become a little bit overgrown. And so I'm wondering if you think about that. I'm just going to try in the future to ask about these plants and whether they're truly natural. I don't want any that are, you know, where human beings have tinkered with them, because it often ends in a disaster.
Right. And I completely understand where you're at, and I completely agree with you. We, like I said, I think I said this earlier, I don't know. We stick with straight species. We always, like, one of the things that we try to do with folks too is we don't always start with the scientific name, but we introduce people who don't know to be looking for the scientific name and how to read the scientific name. So all of plants that all our shrubs that we give away have their scientific names on them, and we buy them from a native plant only wholesaler. So, and the native plant wholesaler that we do use does do cultivars as well, but anything we give away, we're not going to, I mean, we've used one cultivar, and it was a Grollo, Russo Ramica Grollo, you know, and it was for a site that, but it was for a very specific purpose, but 95, if not higher % of what we do is straight species. So.
Well, thank you very much, Diane. And I think that's great you use straight species. It's very important, better for natural areas and our natural animals, our native animals. So thank you. That was very interesting and a lot of excellent questions. I think we should wrap it up now. It's about 9 o'clock. And I really admire what you're doing there, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. Good seeing everybody.